What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be discussing the realistic possibilities for the future of Attack on Titan. Now that the manga has come to an end, I'll be breaking down the likelihood of us ever getting a sequel series or a prequel series. However, I'll start by saying that if we do get something, it won't be Isayama who does it. There are two main reasons why I'm sure he'll never return to this universe, with the first being the intense lifestyle that comes with writing something like this. Back in 2018, he gave a revealing interview during a TV documentary in which he frequently commented about how tired he was all the time, as he'd often do all-nighters trying to meet the deadlines each month. The makers of the documentary observed him during the day, and they noted how they only saw him smile once the entire time, and that was when he took a break to play his Nintendo Switch. The full article is in the description if you want to read it, but clearly drawing Attack on Titan was a stressful experience, and I doubt he'd willingly go back to that lifestyle. This is a man who drew a new chapter every month for over a decade, and he only took a break due to the pandemic in 2020, so if anyone deserves to hang it up forever, it's gonna be him. The second reason I don't think he'll return is due to fan backlash over the ending, as it is something he cares about. When he was writing the final few chapters, he was reading people's comments online, which is nearly always a bad idea, and what that shows is that he genuinely cares about what people think, so it must have hurt a little bit to know that a decent amount of fans didn't like the ending. Obviously, not everyone hated it, because if you look at the sales, the final volume did sell out quicker than expected, although what is undeniable is that Isayama is aware of the criticism he received. On one hand, you could argue this might motivate him to draw something in the future, but even if that happens, I think he'd want to avoid any toxicity that might come with this specific franchise. If I had to bet, I'd say he either never writes a new manga again, or if he does, it will be something brand new where you essentially start with a clean slate. Let me know in the comments if you agree with that or not, but if I'm right, that doesn't mean that Attack on Titan is gone forever. Much like the spin-offs that already exist, any future adaptation can be written by someone who is not Isayama, and this message in the final volume makes it seem like at least they're not ruling it out. The story still has potential for a prequel or sequel that could be insanely popular, and for the rest of the video I'm going to explain the top 3 options that would get people excited. Before we get into the top 3 ideas for a sequel, be sure to hit that sub button as we are on the road to 400k, and drop a like as it does help out the video. Okay, so the most interesting way to continue Attack on Titan is to create a spin-off manga set during the Great Titan War, as this is by far the most fascinating time in Eldian history. Back when Eldia conquered pretty much the entire world, the noble families then began to fight each other in what Willie Tybee described as an endless cycle of conspiracy and betrayal. That premise alone sounds amazing, as each noble family would have had their own distinct motivations depending on which Titan they had. Those with the more powerful shifters would want to maintain things the way they are, whereas the family that had the Car Titan, for example, would likely have less influence by comparison. A disparity of that nature could lead to factions being created among the nobles, and you could have storylines where one group bands together to try and steal the Titan of another, or where there's political disagreements within a specific family over who's going to inherit their Titan. In my opinion, if there was a prequel of this nature, it'd be cool to divide it into 3 major parts that show things from different points of view. The first part could be set before the war, and it would almost like set the scene by introducing us to relevant characters in the Empire who were responsible for triggering the main conflict. The second part could be a full-blown war storyline, and it might be interesting to see those events from the perspective of Karl Fritz, as this guy was so traumatized he just decided to burn everything to the ground. In the main series, he was referred to as a weak king by the Restorationists, but maybe if we saw the things that Karl saw, we'd empathize with his reasoning for what he did. The third part could also be quite intense, as it could focus on the family that had the Attack Titan and the things they went through to avoid being captured by Marley. After Karl Fritz abandoned his people and moved to Paradis, all of the shifters except the Attack Titan and the Founding Titan were captured by the Marleyans, so I think it'd be awesome to see the race against time to hide the Attack Titan away. My guess is that the noble who possessed it would eventually pass it on to a commoner who no one would suspect of having a shifter, while the rest of their family was likely hunted down and killed. Additionally, you could have stories about the members of the Fritz family who rejected Karl's ideology, or the Marleyans who wanted to get revenge on the nobles who had oppressed them for centuries. The point is, there's a lot of material to work with in this part of the timeline, and any author who decides to do it would have a lot of free reign when it comes to how the events of the war unfolded, because there's actually a lot we don't know. Another idea for a prequel is one I've thought about in the past, and that's a series entirely focused from Marley's point of view. It could be set around 70 or 80 years before the mission to invade Paradis, and focus on a previous generation of warriors who had conflicting views about whether they were doing the right thing. Remember, it took decades of indoctrination for present-day eldians to be as brainwashed as they are, but in the beginning, a lot of them would have been skeptical of the new Marleyan regime. I'm certain in the past you would have found more people like Zeke who were pursuing their own agendas rather than the agenda of Marley, and perhaps along the way they tried to convince other warriors to follow the same path. That's why the current military now checks if the warriors are still blindly loyal before each mission, hence why they do these secret evaluations. Finally, the last idea that I think would get people hyped is to do a direct sequel to the events of the manga, but spoiler warning ahead as I will be discussing the end of Attack on Titan. Okay, so back when the original final chapter came out, the last page was Mikasa thanking Eren, and those who watch my videos will know that I thought it was mostly satisfying. I say that because things were left on an open-ended note where there was room to speculate what might happen next, and with Armin going to initiate peace talks, things were relatively hopeful. I felt that conclusion was good since it left certain things to our imagination, and while Eren's actions were undeniably terrible, there was still a sense that what he did wasn't totally in vain. However, when the final volume came out, it added extra pages that, for better or worse, completely reversed some of the big consequences. And I guess the first one to mention would be that Paradis was destroyed, meaning that the peace talks that we saw a few pages earlier were largely meaningless. On top of that, despite the power of the Titans disappearing, it then reappears on the new final page. And yeah, I initially didn't know how to feel about this because, I mean, to be honest, I thought it was completely unnecessary. But then again, if they are planning a sequel, then I guess setting it up like this is the best thing they could have done. I think it would have been more annoying if they started a sequel series and began with this, but at least by putting it at the end of the original series, it's like, okay, we knew this was coming, we knew a sequel was going to happen. The tree here looks exactly like the one that Ymir first fell into, and the growth takes place over such a long period of time that we now have no idea what this universe even looks like. This essentially gives the author of any sequel series a blank slate where they can create whatever type of world they want to see, and the existence of Beren creates many possibilities. Okay, we don't actually know his name yet, but right now he is the strongest contender to be the protagonist of a sequel series, and I'm sure he's someone who already lives on Paradis Island. Despite the surface being a barren wasteland, it's possible he's part of the remaining people who live underground, and based on this final panel, either he or his dog will become the new founding titan. In my mind, there are a few reasons why he's likely from the underground, with the first being that if he was from a foreign country, a child and a dog wouldn't have made that journey by themselves. Paradis has clearly been in ruins for many years, so there are very few reasons why people from other nations would want to visit it, especially as nobody on the outside knows the importance of this tree. To me, the only people who know this tree is special are those who live on the island, since they would be aware that this is the burial site for Eren Yeager. Over the years, this mystical tree probably became some kind of urban legend on the island, to the point where Beren ventured onto the surface to see if the stories were true. A sequel could initially follow his life underground where he hears all these stories, and then eventually it could transition to him, approaching the tree, getting the power of the Titans, and then meeting Eren in the past dimension. What happens after that is anyone's guess, but obviously because this is set in the future, the world has superior technology compared to the original series, so having Titans by themselves might not be enough to win any future wars. Anyway guys, let me know what you think might take place if Beren really does become the new founder, and be sure to hit that sub button if you want to see more videos like this. Until the next one, peace out.